Islam and democracy. Are they compatible or are they totally different? Assalamu alaikum and welcome to a new episode of Youth Talk. First of all, I would like to welcome my guest in the studio. I have with me Sheikh Assim Al-Hakeem. It's a pleasure having you with us, Sheikh Assim.
Nice to be here.
I also have with me three participants. To my left, I have Yunus, who is an English teacher, as well as Abdullah, a computer programmer, and on my right, I have Tariq, who is a student at the Academy of Art. Pleasure having you with us.
Thank you.
Sheikh Assim, in today's episode, we're talking about democracy and Islam. Democracy is a form of governance. Let's first of all start off by asking, what is the form of governance that Islam tells us to rule by, or tells people to rule by?
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, alhamdulillah, wa salatu wa salamu ala rasulillahi wa alihi wa sahbihi wa man ihtada bihudah. Ruling in Islam is a very important subject, and the Quran and Sunnah tell us how the relationship between the ruler and the citizens, and vice versa. And in Islam, we have rights to those who rule and rights to those who are ruled. And unfortunately, in a two-way situation, there are so many times and instances that one party does not fulfill the rights of the other. And that is why Islam comes and tells us how to run or how to sail the boat. Otherwise, the boat will sink. And I'll give you an example. We have a boat that is comprised of a man and his wife. Now, both have rights over the other. Yet, if there is a mismanagement somewhere down the line, it's always the wife that is requested to obey the orders of the husband and to seek the reward and the compensation from Allah Azza wa Jal, whether in this life or in the hereafter. Otherwise, the clash and the conflict would cause to divorce, and then this means the drowning of the ship. Likewise, the relationship between the father and the son. The son has to obey his father, regardless of what the father does to his son. And the father has to be kind to his child by giving him a proper name, by supporting him, by upbringing him in the proper and suitable manner. But if the equation is not complete, and if the father is not treating the son in the way he should, this does not mean that the son can treat his father in a similar manner. On the contrary, he is ordered by Allah Azza wa Jal to keep on being good to his parents, to obey their instructions, regardless of the mistreatment he is getting from them. Now, if we move on to a bigger boat, which is this society, we have the ruler on one end, and we have the followers, the citizens that compose the society. The ruler has to be fair, just, and to give prosperity to his people. And the people should obey the ruler as long as he's not ordering them to sin, if he's not asking them to disobey Allah Azza wa Jal. Because if he does, then we cannot obey his instructions and orders or rulings. So as long as he is within the boundaries, he is doing what he's supposed to do, the people must obey him. What happens if he does not give them prosperity, if he's not just to them, yet he's still a Muslim? He's still applying the rule of Quran and Sunnah. Yet there are few injustices here or there, or a lot of injustices here or there. The Quran and the Sunnah tell us to obey the ruler, regardless of what he's doing to us, providing that he is still a Muslim. And this is for the benefit of the whole society. Now one could say, why not overthrow the government? And we can see this in the banana countries, or whatever they call them. We can see them in the third or fourth world countries. It's very easy to overthrow a government than changing a shirt. It's as easy as that. But look at the consequences. Look at the bloodshed. Look at the chaos. Look at the poverty and injustice that has been implemented to these countries, where they think and pray to God that we wish that we had our previous tyrant who was ruling our country, rather than having this situation we're in. So this is, generally speaking, about the rule of Islam.
So, Sheikh, also I would like to ask you about democracy. We know that democracy means the rule of people by themselves, and it's a Greek word from the Latin word from the past civilization that means that you can rule yourself or take the decision to make something. So how can we apply democracy in Islam?
Okay. Democracy is a very beautiful word, and most of these Westerner words that are new to us, they have a ring to them, and the media again polishes these terminologies. Islam does not recognize democracy as a terminology, and we have lots of terminologies that are considered to be new, but Islamically speaking, you have to go back and cross-examine these terminologies or in the light of the Quran and Sunnah. So when you tell me democracy means ruling the people by the people themselves, okay, who rules the Muslim countries? People. So no, if this is okay, but I think that democracy means that whatever the people choose to be implemented, or rules to govern their country, then this should be applied. And in Islam, this is not acceptable.
Why does it?
Okay, it's very simple, because Allah Azza wa Jal tells us in the Quran that the rule is only for Allah Azza wa Jal. Ruling has to be done by Allah Azza wa Jal. So, in a society, if we have a society that all the people in this society vote to do something or to make something permissible, this legislation is not applicable if it contradicts with the Quran. So let's assume that the whole community agrees on selling alcohol. In Islam, the Prophet ﷺ tells us that Allah has cursed 10 regarding wine or alcohol. Those who make it, or those who grow it, those who sell it, carry it, buy it, and so on. So many of them. So even the whole community agreed on selling it, and they agreed on consuming it. This kind of rule is not acceptable in Islam, because it contradicts with the instructions and orders of Allah Azza wa Jal. Therefore, if ruling the people by the people themselves means that they are allowed to give a verdict or a ruling on something that contradicts with Islam, this is not acceptable at all.
So how could we deal with the democracy as a term just imported from the West? Because when people just enforce us, they said, this is democracy, you should follow our example. And unfortunately, there is a lot of people who are from inside, and they believe that the democracy should be like this. How could we just try to be able to convince them about the Islamic vision toward democracy?
First of all, I think that we should not convince people of anything. And second of all, we must not let people drive us to wherever they want. See, we have the Quran and we have the Sunnah, and they tell us what our objective is. We must not allow others to interfere in our lives. We must not allow others to dictate to us what to do and what not to do. This, as Muslims, is the rule of Allah Azza wa Jal. Now, when they come to us and say that this is the best practice, democracy is the best practice, and you should implement this in your country, it's very easy for us to question this. Because if we look at the West, and again I mean the non-Muslims, whether it's in Europe, States, or whatever, if we look at the level of democracy there, we find that it does not exist. First of all, it's not more than 300 years old, I think, even less, since the French Revolution or whatever. So it's not that old. And you cannot come and say that, well, something this young is good for all. You don't have one size that fits all. And again, it's not applied in the West itself. For example, you have a country that claims to be democratic having two parties. Is that acceptable? I know that there are 6 or 7 or 10 different parties, but they are not qualified to go into the ballot or to go into voting system. And again, you cannot expect that in these countries, those who protested against the war, there were millions of them. And in accordance to the game of democracy, the people are refusing their countries to participate in the war against Iraq, in the search of massive destruction weapons
of mass destruction, and so on.
Whatever. So why didn't they follow their democratic rules by going into the polls and making surveys and seeing if the people want to go and participate in the war or not? So they claim they have democracy, but actually they, in my opinion, they do not. It's just a tool, it's just a hammer used to hammer those who do not follow their policies. So it's a dirty game. Politics is a dirty game. They keep putting the pressure on countries to follow their way of life, their way of living, their ideology. And in Islam, this is not acceptable at all. In Islam, we have our society, we have our rulings, we have the things that are permissible and the things that are not. Islam is a way of life, and we don't have to import anything that dictates to us that you have to live in this form of way or manner.
Yunus, you had something to say?
Okay, Sheikh, let me ask you a question. Was democracy in the Islamic meaning was applied by the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, والسلام, and his companions? And give me some examples showing that.
Okay, well, what is democracy in the Islamic meaning? I mean, just the right to, that there are rights for the ruler and there are duties for the ruler and the other way around of the citizens? Is that the meaning in Islam? Is that the meaning of democracy in Islam?
Again, it's not this clear cut that you cannot say, well, where's democracy in Islam? You cannot come and say, okay, where is art in Islam? Because then you have to identify art.
What art is or what...
Yes. So, in Islam, we have a concept that is called the shura. And it comes from the word tashawur, which is consultation and delegation of opinion and powers. So, in Islam, we're told in the Quran that the rule among the Muslims is by consulting them. And again, this consultation is to come up with an opinion. And this opinion is not a must to be applied. It's just an opinion. So in Islam, we have the Shura Council that gives the ruler their opinion, their research results, so that he would choose whatever he sees appropriate to be implemented. In democracy, we have, again, the Congress, the Parliament, or lower house, the upper house, coming up with resolutions. And then the president, or who is ever on the top of the pyramid, has the right to veto it or accept it. So again, we don't have 100% proof democracy as they propagate. In Islam, the Council of Shura, who gives the consultation to the ruler, is comprised of the elite of the society, such as professors, scholars, men of intellect, businessmen, those who know what they're doing. It's not a matter of the money you have. It's the consultation, the wisdom, the knowledge that you can add value to the ruler by your consultation. So this is the Islamic, again, I cannot say Islamic democracy. So this is the Islamic concept of consultation and getting the experience of the people to benefit the ruler in making the best decision.
Yunus was also mentioning...
Okay, Sheikh, from your opinion, is the democracy applied in the Islamic world at first and the whole world as a whole?
This is a political question again, and I think that to answer it, you have to be indulged in the political system, or let us rephrase that, in the political game. And fortunately, I'm not. But I can tell you, by observing what's going on, we have in the Islamic world countries that claim to be democratic, and they are as far as democracy as they can be.
Democracy in Western terms?
Of course, in the Western terms. For example, in some Muslim countries, a woman is banned from covering her hair, her head. She's banned from covering her, wearing the veil, not covering the face, just simply wearing the veil around her head, covering her hair. She's banned from doing this, and if she does this, she cannot go into universities, she cannot go to schools, she cannot work in public places. Now, where's democracy in this? This is what I choose. Where's the freedom of speech? Where's the freedom of practicing your religion, which Islam allows you to do so? So it's even a higher grade than the so-called democracy. In Europe, for example, very recently, a very famous European country banned the wearing of hijab and religious symbols, so they claim, in public schools.
And schools as well.
But it's okay for you to wear the cross as long as it's under your shirt. And why is that? The only thing that is banned is for a woman to cover her hair. Okay, then what happens if I am a student and I have a beard? Growing a beard is a must in Islam. So does this mean that you will order all students to shave? They don't do this. So in Islam, it tells you that as a man, your trousers, your dress, your lower dress, has to be above the ankles. So does this mean if I go to school or to university with my trousers above the ankle, that I will be banned and I have to extend the length of my trousers? You get people wearing shorts. You get people, girls and women going with miniskirts or even shorter than that.
Semi-naked.
And this is okay. This is A-okay. But to cover your hair as a decent woman, a girl, what harm is this? What harm is there in this? So again, this is not applied in the West itself. In the Muslim countries, it is definitely not applied. It's only applied when they claim they have ballots, they have a voting system to choose which party rules. And even that, with the Western standards, this is unacceptable. For example, if we look at Palestine, now, the Palestinians went to the ballot boxes, they chose their representative, and it was Hamas. The normal thing would be is to accept Hamas as a ruling party. But did they do this? No. On the contrary, they've boycotted Hamas, they've stopped all financial aids, and they're threatening any Muslim country that would support Hamas. And I tell you, any Muslim country that does not stand with the other Muslims worldwide is not a Muslim country. There is something wrong in them because they are not applying the rule of Quran and Sunnah. You should fear Allah Azza wa Jal. You should not fear the West or the so-called democratic countries.
There was a point I wanted to refer to. Democracy, as Tariq was saying, is the rule of the people by the people, and it enshrines the right of the people to choose their own ruler and to remove him if he does not, or she does not, in that sense, do the proper thing or rule in a right way. Is there, in Islam, who should rule from an Islamic perspective, in Islam? Who should rule, and do the people have the right then to choose, remove their ruler? I mean,
okay, this is a very sensitive question. Now, in Islam, those who come to power come through two ways. One way is to be elected or nominated or chosen. For example, when the Prophet ﷺ passed away, he did not indicate or he did not tell his followers whom to succeed him. So the elite of the companions gathered and they chose Abu Bakr. When Abu Bakr was at his dying moments, he chose and said to his citizens that Umar will be my successor. And again, when Umar was in his dying moments, he selected 6 of the 10 that the Prophet ﷺ died being pleased with them, and he told these 6 to consolidate, to talk, and to negotiate, and select one of them to be the ruler. And they chose Ali ibn Abi Talib. So this is one of the ways to select a ruler. I'm afraid that this is not applicable nowadays because it's very difficult to apply. We move on to the second way of selecting the Muslim ruler is by the force of arms. So if there were to be a ruler that has got to the top of the authority or to the top of the pyramid by force, whether he overthrew someone, he took it by hook or crook, he's there. Now, us as citizens, as long as he has reached the top and he is ruling, then we should obey him. Now, one would say, okay, why not overthrow him? Why not remove him? This, again, would cause more harm than good. And Islam looks at the benefits. See, Islam as a whole, as a religion, it is comprised of things to bring up, to gain the advantages and try to complete them, and to prevent the disadvantages and lessen them as much as possible. Everything has advantages and disadvantages. But Islam always goes to the max. So if the pros are more than the cons, then this is what we should do. Now, who has the power to remove the governor or to remove the ruler? No one.
No one.
As long as he's a Muslim and he prays and he does not do anything that nullifies Islam, our Prophet tells us that you have to obey him. That does not mean you cannot advise him, you cannot protest in a civil way, you cannot complain. Yes, you can do all of this, but you may not by any means overthrow him or disobey his orders, providing that he is still a Muslim, he prays, and he applies the Islamic Sharia.
Okay,
But
we'll
there is-
take a short break, Abdullah, and then we'll come back to you with your question in a second. Just this quick break. And welcome back. Abdullah.
I just was saying that when people in the Western world just travel to our countries, they say that there is contradiction. There is a huge contradiction between what is really on the floor and what is the teaching of Islam about democracy and consultation and this stuff. So in this case, they blame Islam, and they condemn. Oh, this is Islam, and this is. So how could we correct this vision?
So you mean that in the fact that we are supposed to be, for example, that an Islamic state, for example, does bad things within itself, so people say that this is what...
Yeah. We just saying about Islam, but
we're not actually doing the right thing.
Actually we're not affecting anything relating to this. I mean that when they are just talking about freedom, they are talking about many things. So it's not easy to convince them with something that you are telling them about, and they could not just see it, they could not just observe it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's only fair to say that we're not perfect. You cannot keep on living a very big lie by saying, no, everything is okay, we're applying Islam 100%. This is a big lie. We are not perfect. We have our shortcomings. We as Muslims and also as countries, we have our wrong practices. But this does not mean that Islam is wrong. We as individuals are wrong. We are the ones who are not applying it as it's supposed to be. And I'll give you another example, a simple example. Everyone knows that a particular religion preaches forgiveness, tolerance, and love. Christianity. And it's one of the largest religions in the world nowadays. Now, it would be unfair for me to judge the Christian faith through what took place in Ireland, for example, and all this bloodshed. Mm-hmm. This is unfair to say, look what Christianity preaches. It would be unfair for me to go to Yugoslavia, to go to the Bosnians, the Serbs, and the Albanians, the Croats, and say that this what Christianity preaches. It's unfair, it's unacceptable. Such generalizations are not acceptable in Islam. You do not judge a religion by the followers. You judge the followers by following their religion. So, to those who come to our country and say that there are contradictions and you're not applying, you're not doing what you preach, we tell them that this is a generalization. We're trying our best to follow our system, and we're doing a good job. See, again, if it were to democracy, the rate of crime would be rocket high. It would be, the sky is the limit, because we have punishments to certain crimes to protect and preserve our security. And this is told to us, we're told to do this as in the Quran and the Sunnah. Now, people from the West come and criticize chopping the heads and the hands and the legs and so on. This is all what they know. But look at the number of prisoners in their prisons. Look at the crime rate. Look at the insecurity in their states and in their countries. Now, we claim as Muslims that this is the ruling of Allah. If I apply democracy to this, nobody would apply these punishments, and this would mean that the rate of crime would go way high. Alhamdulillah, we are enjoying the rule of the Quran by the security we find in our societies.
Okay, Sheikh Assim, I think Yunus had something he wanted to ask.
Well, Sheikh, is the democracy applied in the Islamic family or the Muslim family? For example, if a man wants to marry a girl and he tells his father and mother she is a polite one, she has a great or a good or a modest family, they oppose, they disagree, they don't love her. Only you will not marry her as we don't love her. This is the reason only. Or on the contrary, in the West, the Muslim can marry whom he wants, as she will be his companion or will be his partner in this life.
So is that a type of democracy in a sense? I mean that your family can say yes and no in something like that, and in the West, for example, as Yunus was saying, it's up to you, do whatever you want.
I believe that this does not have to do with democracy more than having the right to choose and the freedom of choice. But let me ask you, Yunus, a question so that I would take a breather and think a little bit more. What happens, do you want us to have the European or the Western family ties in the Muslim world? Because if your answer would be yes, then I would ask you what would happen if your sister decided to get married to someone that does not fit in your family or has a very bad reputation. Now, where's the democracy here? So you have to look at it both ways, in the sense of you being able to marry whoever you want, but also in the sense that you may choose the wrong person, or your sister may choose the wrong person, or she may choose not to marry anyone at all. She may just want to go and live with someone outside the boundary of wedlock. So is this acceptable?
It's not acceptable, of course.
Then, touche. I would say that democracy in the Western sense is completely unacceptable in Islam. I would never, ever dream of my daughter going out with someone. This is against Islam, because adultery, fornication is against Islam. Now, coming back to your example, there should be a level of communication between the son and his parents. And the son has all the right to choose whoever he wants. He does not have to have a guardian for accepting his marriage. But the son is obliged to seek the pleasure of his parents, to ask for their acceptance. So he is, stuck between a rock and a hard place. So you want this girl? That's fine with me. She's a modest. She comes from a modest family. She's a nice girl, religious, smart, beautiful. If your parents don't want her, you have the right to marry her without their consent. But
it's not forbidden in Islam.
No, it's not forbidden, because this is something for they don't have the right to prevent you from doing whatever is good for you. But at the same time, you have to balance things, because at the end of the day, a year or two, you'll be having children, and they are their grandchildren, and you don't want your children to grow up without having their grandparents. And you cannot live without your parents. You cannot live without your family. So it's a long and complicated thing you have to think of. But coming back to democracy in our families, we do have democracy in our families. We do accept our wives coming to us and advising us. We seek their advice. Our Prophet ﷺ, in the event of Hudaybiyah, when the whole community, the whole companions were wearing their ihram, hoping to go for Umrah, they were prevented by the pagans. They prevented them from entering Mecca. So they have agreed on coming the following year, which meant that they had to go out of their ihram state. And the companions could not accept this. So the Prophet told them, come on, let's go back. They can't. They could not comprehend this because they were so tuned. They're so focused on making Umrah. Now you're telling us that we'd rather die. So the Prophet ﷺ went to his house or to his tent, and he was depressed. And he was complaining to one of his wives. Didn't you see what your people did? They're not obeying my orders. I'm telling them, get out of the ihram state and wear your normal clothes and let's head back to Medina. So she told him, this is very easy. You be the first to shave your hair and they will follow immediately. And this is what the Prophet did. He brought the barber and he started shaving his head. And when the minute the companions saw this, they realized that there's no going back. So they immediately went and shaved their heads and wore their normal clothes, though they did not want this. So we do have consultation. We do take advice from our parents, our wives, our kids. And it's a democratic way. We talk with our children. We try to convince them. They try to convince us with what they're feeling or what they're thinking of. And at the end of the day, it's the decision of those who are on the top of the pyramid.
I have just a little comment and a question. In the time being, we see what's going on in the Muslim world, the Western involvement in our culture, in our way of living. And so how could we, just for those who chanting democracy all the time and empowering, they just include a lot of meanings and they just manipulate it and say, how could we just reply on them, and how could we evaluate their understanding of, because their understanding of the term democracy? Should we oppose the democracy as a Western term and start to think of our culture and go back,
or should we show the West what Islam says the rights and rules that should be applied in governing of a society?
And especially for because here there are some Arab and some Muslims who really look into the Western democracy as a model. So, and they are chanting all the time democracy. So democracy means empowering the women or liberating the women.
Well, actually, the way I look at it is very simple. Those who ask for democracy as a solution to the problems Muslims live in are seeking their medicine in the wrong place. Because the diseases we have, corruption, injustice, and you name it, we have it. This is not because of the system is wrong, because the system is not implemented correctly. And it's exactly like the car you drive. It's a good car, but if you drive it in the wrong way, it's not the car that is wrong, it's the driver. So those who call for democracy in the Muslim world, we tell them that it is not acceptable to be looking for solutions other than in the Quran and Sunnah. And we have the solution. Now, Islam ruled and is still ruling for the past 14 or 15 centuries. And we believe as Muslims, and those who have doubts are not Muslims. We believe that it is Allah Almighty who made this religion suitable to all times and locations. So this is to the day of judgment. There's no other religion that's going to follow afterwards. Therefore, those who are calling for democracy, we would like to sit with them and talk to them gently and softly. Do you think that democracy is greater than Islam? Do you think that democracy is overrules? Democracy overrules the Quran and Sunnah? If they say yes, then they're not Muslims. So we have no problem in not answering their queries. But if they say, no, we think that it is part of the Quran and Sunnah, then we tell them, then Quran and Sunnah should overrule all. And again, they have their hidden agendas. Those who come and call for democracy, they're either want by calling for democracy to put the governments in a critical situation, to embarrass their governments. Or they are just simply serving the needs and plans of their masters, where they have studied and where they're seeking the pleasure of. As Muslims, we have the answer, but we need the will and power to implement it.
Sheikh Assim, there was something else I wanted to ask about. You mentioned that for citizens in an Islamic state or society should follow their rulers as long as these rulers are not contradicting Islam or performing sins. When is it exactly that citizens can disobey their rulers? I mean, are there certain situations? And in that sense, how can they disobey them? Is there a form of disobedience? Is it violent disobedience? Is it passive disobedience?
Okay. First of all, let me rephrase or correct a conception that I may have misunderstood. But you said that we must not obey the rulers if they sin. No, this is not the case. There are individual sins and there are sins that they order us to do.
On society
so
itself.
If I have a Muslim ruler that drinks and fornicate on his own, this is his problem.
What if I know?
Even if you know, this is something between him and between the Almighty, because as individuals we're all sinners. And you cannot expect someone, there's no way that someone can come and say, well, everyone else is a sinner, I'm a pure Muslim, I have no sins. No, this is unacceptable. So the sins of the ruler is his own. This is between him and Allah. And may Allah forgive all our sins. Now when the ruler legislates and he puts part of the rules that you should follow, something that is sinful, if he makes intoxicants, for example, if he makes alcohol permissible, and he says, this is permissible. Now, he's not doing it as a sin, because he could allow people to drink. This is a sin. When you ask him, why are you doing this? He said, yeah, I know it's haram, but it's an income. It's tourism. If we don't sell, then we won't have any tourism. So this is a sin. It's a major sin. And you're going to be punished in hell, man, and God knows how long. It's up to Him, the Almighty. But this is a sin. You should prevent this. You have the means and tools to prevent this. He said, well, I can, but I believe it's haram. I believe it's forbidden. But I think I have to do it. Okay, this is a sin. So, again, we as citizens must not accept this, in the sense that if he tells me, come on, Sheikh Asim, well, I don't think he's going to call me Sheikh Asim, but if he says, come on, Asim, you have to sell wine, or you have to serve wine in your restaurant. I said, sorry, I can't do that. He said, you have to, it's a must, I'm going to put you in jail. Said, put me in jail. It's no problem. Because I cannot sit passively and say, no, he ordered me to do so, I'm going to do so. This is unacceptable. Now, to overthrow, to have positive rebellion or whatever, this again comes into the teaching of the Prophet ﷺ. Our Prophet told us, may peace and blessing be upon him, that you must obey the ruler, even if he was an Abyssinian ruler with a very small head. You know, like some of them come. So this is a description that means that you as an Arab must not accept this. But still, the Prophet says that if he was made a ruler on you, you should follow and obey, because he is ruling by Allah Azza wa Jal. And even if you don't like this, you have to obey. And the Prophet also told us ﷺ, that there will come a time where the rulers make things that you dislike. So one of the companions came and said, well, if we don't do things we dislike, why not cut the throats off? Why not overthrow them? The Prophet told them, no, you should obey as long as they pray. As long as they are Muslims and they pray 5 prayers a day, you should obey them. And another hadith, the Prophet says, alayhi salatu wassalam, that you may not overthrow or rebel on your rulers unless you see blasphemy that you have evidence from Allah Azza wa Jal. If they commit blasphemy, they do something that nullifies their Islam, and it's not something out of that may be possible here or there. No, something that is clear-cut. This is blasphemy. This is something that nullifies Islam. If they do this, then you may rebel on them.
But what about a situation then where the ruler prays, but people are starving, and he's just, for example, him and the people around him, for example, are taking the wealth of the country to themselves, and this is continuing. Okay, people have not rebelled, have obeyed him, but the situation is just getting worse.
This is an injustice, again, that has to be corrected. And it can be corrected through different channels. It can be corrected through advice. It can be corrected through getting the other Muslims, the Muslim League, the other countries to assist and to contribute in solving this crisis. But it cannot be solved by overthrowing the government. Now, let's look at this scenario. He's a tyrant. He has the army. He has everyone supporting him. And the people are starving. Do you think that they will be able to overthrow him? He will annihilate half of them, or 60-70% of them, and still the rule of the elite remains. Islam does not look at the benefit of the ruler. Now, by saying this, don't think that, well, if I'm a ruler in Islam, I've had it made. It's not this way. The hadiths that came to emphasize the punishment of a ruler if he's unfair are enormous. For example, the Prophet says, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that whoever governs a community or a people or whatever, and he dies cheating them. Now, he did not deprive them of the rights. He just died cheating them. He will be deprived from entering, he will be prevented from entering paradise. It's a grave sin to cheat. Then what about doing injustice? What about eating their savings and belongings and not letting them live as human beings? Of course, by far, this is far greater than just cheating them.
Sheikh Assim, Luqman Al-Hakeem, thank you very much for joining us on Youth Talk. Unfortunately, we've run out of time for this episode. It's a pleasure having you with us.
Thank you.
And I'd also like to thank my participants. We have Yunus, Abdullah and Tariq. Thank you all for joining us as well. We will be back again with a new topic on Youth Talk. And until then, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
la la la